Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome. Oh, geez, I hit the table. I hit the table, and my table is rising up on its own. Look at that. That's pretty funny. There we go. Bring that down slowly. Down. There we go. Yeah, with Helen Russ was something.
I can do the same thing.
I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
I think some magicians can. All right, so let's talk about the CBA for Major League Baseball. They have no negotiations on record. They haven't spoken in, I want to say it's a month now.
December 1 was the
okay. And yeah, nothing is on schedule. Nothing, and so they're all playing it fast and loose, even though spring training would start middle of next month, like the 15th, 20th, something like that. Guys start to report, and still not even discussing. We also saw that Ken Rosenthal got fired from MLB Network because Rob Manfred apparently has thin skin too.
I mean, okay, this would be akin to Gary Bettman firing Mike Zeisberger from NHL.com because Mike Zeisberger wrote a critical column about Gary Bettman.
Right.
Honestly, Rob Manfred is a weasel. He really is. And it's like, I mean, he has run Major League Baseball terrible. He's made Bud Selig look great, Russ.
He has. No, he's made him look like a sympathetic character, which is hard to do. And he's managed to do that. And
some of the crap that he has put in, the runner at second base, in extra innings, the 3 batter minimum, that's fine. But some of the stuff is sort of, and we know that he's pressing for the DH in the National League, which will piss off an entire fan base of multiple cities. Rob Manfred is terrible as a commissioner, and he needs to go. But if the owners are making money, it's just like the NFL. Roger Goodell is reprehensible, but he's making them billions. So there you go.
Yeah, but I think it's different in baseball. Baseball is definitely losing market share and mind share for sure. Corporate sponsorship's not going to be there forever. It's going to go to other things, other sports, maybe pickleball. I see it's on ESPN. So
crazy.
But the other thing is,
rise in pickleball.
If I were an owner, I would try and get Manfred out and try and get a real baseball guy in there. That's what they need. And I don't mean somebody who played baseball. Like someone like Bob Costas would be great as an example. Yeah. Just somebody who cares about baseball, has been around baseball their entire life, maybe isn't a lawyer, because sometimes having a lawyer as your commissioner, there's good and bad with that. And the good is, yes, they end up negotiating great things. The bad is sometimes they're bad with PR. I mean, Gary Bettman got really good with that over the years, and now he uses that negative PR as a positive. But Manfred has not figured out how to do the PR angle and still comes off as a cutthroat lawyer, and fans don't like it.
Oh, yeah. No, it's definitely a mess, and it's hard. It's hard to use that PR in a positive way. We've seen that, right?
And Timothy in the chat's like, well, they're trying to shorten games. Okay, you can't. You know how you shorten games? A pitch clock. That doesn't affect the game. That doesn't affect the spirit of the game. But
putting those things that I'm as an external baseball fan, and I don't usually chime in on baseball talk in the pre-shows, but as an external, as a person who played baseball, I was in the Little League World Series, or early rounds, but I was in that, with them, I was a all-star catcher and stuff like that. Am I the only one who thinks that baseball fans are baseball fans? It's not like the shortening the game doesn't. It doesn't. No. It's not like suddenly people I know who aren't baseball fans are going to start watching.
I will say this, Ek. It's people of about 40 years old and older that don't want a lot of these changes, and then it's the other baseball fans that grew up with baseball in their household that are okay with anything that happens, steroids included. They just like baseball. So there is some of that.
They're not looking for changes either, though. Really, are they? I mean, are they just?
I don't think they're seeking changes. Well, I think people are tired of long games, but again, I've had the solution forever. You just don't let batters come out of the batter's box. You get one time out.
I mean,
they won't do that.
There's a solution. There's a solution for, and believe me, I've watched enough Yankees Red Sox games on a Sunday night on ESPN that starts at 7:00 and ends at 1 a.m. It's ridiculous, and it's because the batter steps out of the batter's box, he adjusts his crotch, he adjusts his helmet, he spits in his helmet. The pitcher, that they stare at each other for 20 seconds, and then the pitcher steps off the mound. get if you want the game to be sped up, okay, pitch clock. Don't allow the batter to come out of the batter's box more than once. Don't interrupt the spirit of the game, which is what they're doing with a lot of the stuff that they've done.
Right. Yeah, and I think I don't know. I feel like baseball fans. When I watch a baseball game, when I'm in the mood for a baseball game, which does happen. I mean, not like you guys, but I'm a casual baseball fan. If I'm going to watch a baseball game, I kind of know going in that baseball's long. Like that's a long game. It's a long game, and it's going to be something I'm going to sit around. I'm going to enjoy while I'm reading or hanging out or doing anything like that. Like that kind of stuff.
No, but and that's a good point because if you go to a game, right? Yeah. And it's a nice spring or summer day, and you're going with somebody, you're going to talk through half the game anyhow.
Right. That is the glory of baseball to me. Like the glory of baseball is that it is the sport that you can do that in. That you can actually, it is tailor made for the way you want to feel in summer, like the attitude you want to have on a summer day. Like that's and we all work hard, but that's to me that's still the idea of summer. Okay, we're gonna sit around, we're gonna hang out. I'm gonna put the game on. Oh, you know what we need to get. We need. The wife needs something to cook with, or you've got something, right? You run to the store, come back, miss an inning, maybe. Right. But it's just like to me that's baseball. Like hockey, whenever you have to go out to get something in the middle of the game, you got to have it on the radio. You got to make sure you're gonna miss it. You're gonna miss it. Oh, just my.
No, that's true.
Anyway, let's get into. We got some really interesting things to talk about, including a Toronto Edmonton match coming up here. But besides, is that tonight, Mike?
No, tomorrow.
Tomorrow night, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's get into it. Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, January 4th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and I am really heartbroken about how the Oilers are playing right now.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. You're wearing whatever you're wearing. You're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. It's the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And let's start with the Oilers for a second because they are definitely in a tailspin of epic proportions.
The gift that keeps on giving.
They're in a tailspin of epic proportions. And right now, it's really kind of hard to get a gauge on what this team is. Like the beginning, the Oilers were incredible. And they just looked amazing. And now they look awful. Really, we know that they're neither incredible nor awful. But what are they? And last night was the Rangers game, which I watched. Was it good? The Rangers, by the way, my Stanley Cup pick, now has the most points in the NHL. Mm-hmm. But
trust me, Rangers fans don't want to win the President's Trophy Act. They've had bad luck with that.
Yeah, I know that's true. That's true. But here you go. Last night the game starts a couple seconds in. Koskinen's and goalie shoots it over the boards. Delay game penalty. Then a couple minutes later, botches. I mean, they do kill that off. A couple minutes later, botches a goal, and the Rangers are behind the eight ball against the. I mean, the Oilers are behind the eight ball against the Rangers, which is, you don't want to be because that Rangers team and Georgiev. I mean, they have two goalies right now that are, playing like two of the top 10 goalies in the league, honestly. So the reality is, like, where are you going to go with this, right? So,
wait. So if they're two in the top 10, where's Sorokin fit in?
He's not in the top 10 right now. I mean, obviously,
he's still having a pretty.
He's having a good year. No,
he's doing it. He's doing all he can do. I mean, I don't think.
No, I mean, it's unfortunate that the team in front of him is.
I mean, without Sorokin, where would the Islanders be? Like,
oh my God! Yeah, that's a fair point.
But, I mean, the reality is right now, like, unfortunately. So So let's look at the Oilers. What are they doing here? So Koskinen, I mean, it's no surprise that they need a goalie. That's not. We've been talking about that for, I always thought the Flyers were the team with the most goalie talks, on our podcast. But I think the Oilers have taken it over.
But here's the crux of the situation.
Yeah,
the Oilers are 2-9-1 in their last 12 games. Yeah. So take the month of December and look at the statistics and look at what they've done since December 1st. And the only player who has scored over a point per game is Connor McDavid, who everybody would accept as the best or the second best or the third best forward or player in the NHL. After that, Draisaitl, less than a point per game. Their next highest scoring forward has 7 points. Zach Hyman has 5 points. But what happened in the first 2 months is that Draisaitl and McDavid played like Superman and Batman. They were unbelievable.
But not just them. I mean, it was them, but it wasn't just them. It was the guys. It was Hyman. It was
there were some other guys. Hyman was
other people they
ridiculous.
picked up. It was
a couple others, but my point is,
for the first time we were talking about the Oilers having secondary scoring, and it looked like they were going to.
Yes.
They were on top of things, and their defense. We were wondering how their defense was doing it. But they were outscoring teams, so they were winning games, and that was the reality. And you're right, they were playing. I mean, beyond human. No question about it. McDavid's continued to play that way. Draisaitl hasn't, but that's not to say that Draisaitl isn't still playing in the top 3 or 4 of the league. So the reality is that this Oilers team there's two. I've talked about this many times, and I feel like a broken record. But if you watch the show, I'm sorry, but this is the reality that I feel like there's 2 ways you can change things, and that's on a team. And you can change the coach, even if the coach isn't necessarily the problem. But changing the coach changes things. We've seen it happen in Philly. I mean, they just elevated an assistant coach, and they're playing better. Is that they're playing somewhat better? Is that going to be long term? Who knows? You can change the coach, or you can change the goalie, right? And those are the 2 things that change the dynamic of a team. It's just the reality.
All right. So there's 3 things that are definitely going wrong with the Oilers. Mm-hmm. Aside from Dave Tippett just looking completely defeated these days. So the first thing, and Anna agrees wherever she is, the first thing is, that Koskinen third goal was really the backbreaker. Like that's the one where, the Oilers fight back and they get back to a 2-1 game, and that third goal is the killer. So there's that. The second thing is the Rangers do have a theory of shutting down the team's best line. Let's do that, and let's let everybody else beat you. And so the Rangers do have a lot of teams that have third and fourth line guys scoring against them, but they completely derailed the McDavid line. McDavid had literally 2 good shots on goal. Guys like Fox, other forwards, Strome, they all were playing. They all had active sticks going, and it was like running into a wall of sticks. They couldn't find any space. Right. The problem is when you do that to the Oilers, and look, and I like McLeod who scored. I actually think Ryan McLeod can play a little bit. So, but again, you need like 5 or 6 guys to be able to do it. And you know who the one guy who was just and I don't know, maybe he's out with COVID, but was Nugent Hopkins even in the lineup yesterday?
I don't think so. At least if he was, I didn't.
If he was, I didn't see him. And if he is,
and I watched a lot of that game. So,
and if he is, he's not doing much this year either. And again, you go back to that.
RV started off as the gangbusters.
He did start off gangbusters. He is now leveled off. They are emotionally fragile.
Yeah, no Nugent Hopkins.
Okay, so he didn't play. They're emotionally fragile though.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, they're an emotionally. They're way beyond fragile. I would say they're an emotional wreck. I mean, they are, and their fans are losing it. And they should be there. The frustration level is an all-time high.
But okay, and I can take a bow right now, but if they turn things around, then obviously things will change. But right now, they're on the precipice of missing the playoffs, which I said, maybe it was a little jokingly I was saying that, but I really thought that the flaws of the Oilers were not addressed by Ken Holland during the offseason. I know the last 2 years they went after Grubauer this summer. They went after Markstrom last summer. They struck out on both of them. I have said constantly, you need to if you can't get a goaltender via free agency, you need to trade for one. And they didn't want to expend the assets to get the goaltender.
Well, they should have bought out Koskinen if for no other reason. So they would have had maneuverability this year,
or trade him to Arizona.
Started to fail. Yeah,
or trade him to, right. They could have done that, but they didn't want to give up the draft pick or whatever it would have taken to do that. Plus, they're deep. Okay, I don't know many teams and many general managers in the league who, when you're one of your sore spots is defense, that you trade a young and pretty good defenseman in Ethan Bear for a third liner who's not a bad player in Warren Fogle, but that I think the need for solidity on defense was greater than the need for depth scoring.
And the crazy thing is, let's go back to Tippett for a second, because he sort of has gotten an amazing amount of, and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, like no one seems to be calling for Tippett's head, which is pretty astonishing. I mean, now it's changing,
Well,
But,
that started in the last week because all of a sudden, the name, and again, I think I mentioned this with the Ken Holland connection. You knew that the name that would come out there is Babcock, and I mean, if they want to go that direction. I personally think that would be. I mean, maybe there would be a short-term turnaround because Babcock is a good.
There'd be short-term gains.
If anything, Mike, I think because Holland's there, that won't happen. Like the reality is, and if Kevin was on, I think he would agree that
right.
That just ended. Holland has seen all he needs to see of Babcock to know what Babcock's about. And at the end there, Babcock wasn't helping them at all. Like, so the reality is, like, in Detroit, that's the last place it goes.
But think of it this way, Ak. If they don't turn it around and they miss the playoffs and they have teams like San Jose and LA and Winnipeg and Dallas breathing on their heels, Holland might get fired this year.
No, there's no question about that. I think that Holland is in trouble too. And the reality here is, they still have a very good chance of making the playoffs. They're still in the playoffs.
Sure.
Yeah, because the Pacific, there's no question.
They could not play any worse than this, and they're still in the playoffs. Like, they're still battling through this. At some point, they played well enough at the beginning of the season to give them a little bit of leeway there. I mean, that's gone now, but it's not like that. If they were playing like this the whole season, they would be out of it completely. My
point is that when McDavid and Draisaitl play like mere mortals, they don't have enough talent behind them to cover up their flaws. And when Mikko Koskinen in the last month has an .878 save percentage and is 1-5-1, the guy should be waived. The guy should be sent anywhere you can. You're better off giving Stuart Skinner, who's a young goaltender, the opportunity before you go out and trade for a goalie. Because right now their season is going down the toilet.
No, and I think that there's a couple different points there. I think on one hand, it's easy to sit there and Koskinen has been horrendous. Mike Smith, when he was in there, was great, but he's gotten hurt. He can't stay healthy at all.
And we can predict that because
there's more to it than that. There's more. I think that it's so easy to sit there and say, it's up to if Draisaitl and McDavid do this or Draisaitl and McDavid do that. I mean, the reality is the rest of this team is really what's going to matter more than those two are going to keep them in games. If they're going to make the playoffs or do anything in the playoffs, it's going to be because of the rest of the teams and the rest of the team. And that's where, you can sit there and definitely criticize their defense, but also at the same time, the moves they made in the beginning of the year were working. So when they were getting good goaltending from Smith, they were a really good team. And I can't help but think that, it does affect you completely throughout the lineup. I've said it many times, if a goalie's not making big saves, the offense doesn't want to take the chances to score goals. It just goes throughout the entire lineup.
Just to answer the chat room, Wallstead, from what people were reading and tweeting, got COVID during the World Juniors and is still stuck in Edmonton. So he wouldn't be playing for the Oilers this year anyhow.
No, well, I mean, but what are you going to do? Throw an 18-year-old goaltender, 19-year-old goaltender into the Wolves? I mean, if they drafted Kosa or Wall,
listen, and don't have me talking about when it's too soon for a goalie to be an NHL starter, or the people in Buffalo and some other windbag might start to attack me. So
Oh yeah, no, that's a tough spot to be in. Obviously, it doesn't work sometimes. It usually doesn't work when you go too young with goalies.
Okay, my overall point is that even a guy like me who notices the obvious noticed well before what they did this summer the flaws of the Oilers. And Ken Holland really, a 38-year-old Duncan Keith, Cody Ceci, and re-signing Tyson Barrie was your answer, and bringing back Chris Russell was your answer on defense. Darnell Nurse is fantastic, but he can't play 45 minutes. No. I love Evan Bouchard. He's going to be a really good defenseman. There's just not enough there. So you shouldn't have traded Ethan Bear for Warren Fogle. And your goaltending, you had to find a way to address your goaltending, and for 2 straight off seasons, you didn't. And right now, it's going to throw unless you go ahead and find some answer before the deadline, it's going to flush your team down the toilet.
Now, I do want to point out some positives. So on the positive side with the Rangers, they again started to play Lafreniere with some quality players. He was playing. He was with Gaudreau. He was with Strome. Hey, well, all of a sudden he gets 2 points.
That line looks great.
Yeah, and he looked good. He was fourth on it. He's fourth on the team in goals. He doesn't have many assists. Well, why is that? Well, he doesn't get any power play time. 7 of those goals are even strength. He was playing on bottom lines with guys like Dryden Hunt and Julian Gauthier and Philip Hedl, and none of them are going to help him. And right now, where he is at in his career, he's not ready at the point where he's going to make them better. And look, we talked about Connor McDavid. He doesn't make anybody better even now. So some guys just don't do that, right? So
Yeah.
if you want the production, you got to play him with some skill guys. And I would leave him with Strome for as long as Panarin is out. Why not?
I would too. I mean, and there's no reason not to right now. You're in a good spot. You know, you're in the playoffs pretty soundly at this point. You're looking pretty good. And you know, the time has come to, like, you know, Lafreniere has been brought along slowly by the Rangers.
Yeah.
You know, for a first
and Adam Fox.
pick.
One more thing. So it is still my belief that Adam Fox is the best defenseman in hockey.
Yeah.
I don't care if voters don't want to give it to him, because deep down they don't want to give a young guy a second Norris, but he's still leading the league, leading the all defensemen in points, and all of the other things that he does in a game really is better than any of the other defensemen. Makar is better offensively, sure, as far as goals go. But
yeah, Makar's more dynamic, but you know,
the impact on the game that Fox has, and you saw it in the Edmonton game, and everybody got to see it nationwide. That was a pretty big deal.
The crazy thing about this is, like, you know, like we look at the, you know, before Drury gets there, you know, the job that the GM does there, you know, is really pretty phenomenal in the Rangers. Like, I mean, Shesterkin and Drury have two really solid, obviously, drafts, pickups that they made. They weren't. Everybody knew Shesterkin was going to be good, but he's really, really good. Fox is, you know, I don't think he was going to be considered, you know, one of the top 2 defensemen in the league when he comes through. Panarin is easily the best UFA signing that we've ever seen, and you know, you go through the whole thing. It's just like,
although technically, they've had some good ones, but I would say he might be the best. I'd have to really look at that.
I think if you go through the league, it's hard to find a better
in the league right now. Yes.
Yeah, like
I thought you were talking Rangers history. Okay.
Yeah, no, not Rangers history, but like the last 20 years of the NHL, I would try to find a more impactful, more worth it guy.
Zdeno Chara in Boston.
Yeah,
that was the most impactful, because Boston was a crap team before they signed Chara. They had, you know, they were trading Thornton. They were a perennial loser. They add Chara. They have all those good drafts.
I mean, that's true.
Yeah, so I mean, I think
you know, we very rarely see these guys worth what they signed for. You know,
I do want to address to Andre the reason someone like Adam Fox is a 3rd-round pick. He always had talent. He was with the NTDP, but he wasn't that strong. He wasn't as fast as he is right now. He was always playing with great players, but they also knew he'd be going to college. So all of those things, and many figured at the draft that he'd probably have to go at least 3 years in college. Okay. And then he would have to have some AHL time and then make the NHL and be really good. I think a lot of people had him pegged to be like a second pairing kind of defenseman. Me too. And I watched him in Harvard and I thought he was great. I wrote glowing reports. Still didn't think he was going to be one of the best in the league. And that's just something that does happen in players that sometimes you don't see.
Well, I mean, it's so it's opportunity meets hard work meets all kinds of different luck, all kinds of things that play into a player getting developed like that, right? So, as you know really well. And speaking of defensemen, I mean, while we're here, I've been working on the rumor chart, you know, which is coming out this week. And I've been going through, which is always fun. And then I've been going through the defensemen, the UFA defensemen, the ones whose contracts are expiring. First off, I starting there, and there's not a great. You could sit there and say there's not a great, you know, amount of super talent. There are very impactful players on this list, and I think that this list. I mean, there's a couple top guys.
Well,
and
there's a big 4.
There's a big 4. The one I read about today. You know, we talked a lot. We've already talked a lot about Ben Sherratt, in Montreal. You know, and he's going to be one of the top guys for sure. He's going to probably get a 1st-round draft pick. The guy I talked about today, in Mark Giordano, is the one that's actually getting some more interest than Sherratt. When I talk around, there's more teams interested in him, and I think because of the fact he's got so much experience, because of the fact that he is such a leader. and
he's
so
the ultimate quick fix. Nobody would want him and want to retain him for like 3 more years. But for this, yeah,
it's like the perfect player in this situation. I mean, he's a 6.75.
But we have to ask the question, because again, we asked the question even when they got him initially and made him captain. Are they really going to trade the first captain they ever had at the first trading deadline they ever have? I don't know if they're going to do that, Eck. Francis may just decide not to do that.
He might decide not to do that. That's true.
It's a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity if he doesn't, Russ. I mean,
but you understand the PR consequences of that, though.
Yeah, there's definitely a PR consequence to that. But there is also a Seattle fan base, I think, that's accepting that Seattle is, a normal expansion team. Maybe even better than normal in some ways. I mean,
and they have a record of a normal expansion.
But they're not. I mean, but they're not actually. Well, when we look back on some records of expansion teams, they're not that bad. I mean, honestly, they're not as bad as expansion teams in the NHL that have been way worse than them.
They're not as bad as the early day Washington Capitals, with I think 8 wins in 74 or 75.
Yeah. I mean, look at the early.
Well, if they didn't beef up their goaltending at the last minute, Seattle, they might have been that bad, though.
Yeah, they were heading towards that. I mean, it's tricky for sure. But so Giordano, and I've also been asking around teams interested in defensemen, and a really interesting thing about Giordano, of course, is that Calgary would love to have him back. They would take him back in a heartbeat. They didn't want to get rid of him. Remember, they had to expose him. It's not like he's not going to feel like he understood why they exposed him. There's no hard feelings there between Calgary and Giordano, and I think that would be a great fit. But the interesting thing is Edmonton also making a play for that. Now, Edmonton doesn't have cap space to do almost anything right now, and that's the issue, right? So they're going to have to figure out really creative things to do if they're going to make any sense. And they're going to have to do things like move Koskinen and a first-round draft pick somewhere to lose the contract, and things like that are going to have to happen in order for this to happen. And I think that they will, because talking to people in Edmonton this morning, the last thing they want to do is hype up a great first-round draft pick, like another first-round draft pick. Like they're fine. They realize that the problems they have in Edmonton can be fixed without the draft. Like this can be done if they have the money. They can fix it.
For a year.
That's the problem.
It's not a long-term fix, Zach. You're really talking for this year.
Yeah, but I mean, the first round pick, which is like that quick impact soon player, that's not really what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody. They're looking for a solid, experienced guy who can help lock things down when they need to lock it down.
No, but they have players on their last legs like Chris Russell too. Like it's just, if they had better drafts, you would have more of these guys filling in from the previous draft.
But yeah. I mean, in hindsight, yes, but the reality is where they are right now and what they have to do right now.
No, you're right.
Can't sit around and wait for another draft, because that they can't wait for a draft pick to develop. That's not where the game we're going to play.
I'm not sure how costly it's going to be to move Koskinen, since he's an expiring contract. Basically, like Arizona is going to have a ton of cap space when they trade all their UFAs. So, and they have no goaltending with the Veljama and Carter Hutton, and I think Wedge.
But they still, I mean. No,
but I'm just saying, I don't think
Arizona in the past. I still can't believe that they gave they let Montreal off the hook with the Dvorak trade. I can't believe they didn't ask to get more out of that still.
But I don't think it's going to cost them a first round pick to dump Koskinen a month before the end of the season. I think they can accomplish that without giving up a first. But they are going to have to use that first. And Holland apparently has said he's willing to trade the first to upgrade at a different area. The question is, this is like the holes in the dike. You just have so many fingers. How many?
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't want to make. I don't want to get too far back into Edmonton, but I just think that they're one of those. Calgary, Edmonton, Rangers have cap space, and they're an interesting team to watch here. How they're going to play it out. Giordano is a good fit for them. He really would fit nicely in their lineup, I think. And I also think Giordano would fit nicely on the island. I know people are saying that it makes
done.
They really are less done now, even than when I talked to you last time, Mike. And they are now have only lost 2 games in regulation in their last 10. They are, if they were to win their 3 games at hand,
not gaining any ground, Eck. That's the problem.
Mike, if they win their 3 games at hand, they're tied with the Flyers 3 points out of a playoff spot. I mean,
the Flyers aren't in a playoff spot.
No, but we're talking about a team 3 points out of the playoff spot.
But Boston has 5 games in hand on both of them.
What was that?
Boston has like 5 games in hand on both of them.
Let me look at that real quick. But I
Yeah,
know they have
Boston has
something.
28 games. They have 34 points. The Islanders have 26 points with the same amount of games. They're
Okay, so they played 28. So yeah, I mean,
they're 8 points behind a wild card spot with the same amount of games, and so yeah, unless they win 12 in a row, they're done. That's what I'm saying.
They continue to lose 2 out of every 10 in the regulation. They're not done. And
I don't know. Actually, that's a good question. If we had a real math person on the show, no offense, Zach. I mean, I'm not saying you're not. Maybe even your wife would be the person to figure out the percentage what that percentage is and the percentage that everybody else would have to lose. I still think that's an uphill battle.
I mean, okay, so I think last year, someone can look this up. I think the last playoff spot was in it was like 93 or 94 points. Say something like that. So they have 54 games remaining, and how many points they would need for 26. What's that?
You just said, like, what you just said there is like mind-boggling. 54 games remaining.
Well, so does Boston.
I know, but 54 games, a lot can go wrong with a lot of teams, and a lot can go right with a lot of teams in 54 games. Right. I mean, to sit there and call them out of it.
But they could start losing again, too. Like, that's
right.
Sure. I mean, they can, but this is a team that everybody kind of agreed earlier was a pretty good team if they have other pieces, and they're not that bad right now.
Well, we also took a leap of faith that Zach Parise might give him something. He hasn't. Palmieri might give him something. He hasn't.
Palmieri, yes. Like Parise.
Pajot would be better. He's not. Like, there's a lot of other things that have gone wrong here.
Pajot is not without hope.
No.
I mean, the reality is Pajot has had an inconsistent career. That's one of the reasons they didn't hold on to him in Ottawa. I mean,
and to echo the chat room, Noah Dobson's playing great. And yes, he's going to be a terrific defenseman. There's no question. So it's good. That's all good. But I don't even know if that's enough. It's probably not enough.
Right.
I mean, there are 4 teams in between them and the wild card, the second wild card.
And let's talk about those teams.
Okay, Boston is the second wild card, and they have the same amount of games remaining, and they're 8 points ahead. Okay, they are 7 points behind Detroit.
So Boston is probably passing whoever's at Pittsburgh, right? Who's ahead of them, probably in all likelihood.
Probably,
so.
But okay, but
look at Pittsburgh, more or less.
Okay,
I don't think Pittsburgh's dropping. I think they're going to stay exactly where they are.
Got 41 points. They're 15 points.
Correct.
They only have 3 games in hand on them, and they're 15 points behind.
Tristan Jarry's a Vezina candidate.
But right now he is, I mean, and listen, and that's good. And that we're what 1/3 away in the season, and that's good.
So they have absolutely no hope whatsoever of getting into the top 3 in their division. Carolina's got 47, and the other 2 teams have 48. So
they're locked out of that. They're
locked out of that. So their only option is the wild card. They are 15 points behind Pittsburgh and had 3 games in hand on the Penguins, and they're 8 points behind Boston, and Boston is the same amount of games. They're done. They're done.
It's a very hard.
I mean,
I don't even think
with 54 games to go.
I don't even think the Flyers have a good chance. They don't.
How could they not? They have 50. They have 50. What 50 games to go, and they're 3 points out.
It's not a good chance. It's a chance.
They can't make up 3 points in 50 games.
Even with this winning with Mike Yeo, they have not gained much ground.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think they're going to make it.
I know that. But what you said about Yeo was accurate, that they played better, but is it good enough? And the answer is no.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we talked about that. And I wrote about, in my resolutions for teams that the Flyers have to really seriously consider the fact that they're going to lose their shot at some decent head coaches here if they wait, if they hold off on this.
That's true. You're right about that.
These coaches are going to be gone, and I think that I think Tippett's going to be replaced this year. I wouldn't be shocked if we see another interim coach out there replaced this year. That's going on right now. I think that the way this plays out, there's at some point these the Flyers have an opportunity right now with a lot of coaches out there that are half decent to jump on. They're not, but that's I don't want to get into them either. But the reality is 3 points out. You can't call a team done with this 3 points out with 54 games to go. That's just absurd. I mean, you can say you don't think they're going to make it because they're not good enough, and I agree with that. But to call them done is like. Anyway, moving on to other defensemen who are out there. Strawman's out there with Arizona. I don't know if that's
okay. Here's the big 4. Giordano is 1.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to get to him.
Sherratt is 2. Rasmus Ristolainen with Philadelphia is 3.
Yep.
And John Klingberg in Dallas is 4.
I don't get Ristolainen's not 3 based on people I've been talking to.
No, I'm not saying he's the third best. I'm just saying of the 4. The 4. I'm not ranking them. I'm just saying that I think they're the big 4. Now the question is, Philadelphia, will they trade Ristolainen? Klingberg, will Dallas trade him? I don't think they want to. Lindholm is another one. Josh Manson, but again, I'm not putting them in that category because Anaheim is in the playoffs right now. If they drop down like a stone, then they're available, maybe. But
Miller and Butcher in Buffalo will probably be moved. I've been told that.
Yeah, Butcher could get some consideration.
He could get some consideration, right?
Colin Miller's a right-hand shot, and I've connected.
But he's at this point fool's gold. He's nothing.
Well, no. I'm talking strictly depth, Russ.
Right.
And that's what Colin Miller has long been connected to Toronto. They were interested in him when he was with Boston, and before he went to Vegas in the expansion draft. He played for the Sioux under Keefe and Dubas. He's a right-hand shot. They're short on right-handed defensemen. So I think there's a possibility, depending on the Sabres and what they do in terms of eating salary, that a guy like Miller and a guy like Will Butcher. Butcher has had a terrible year. I don't know how much they get.
But he was sick last year.
He was sick, and he's in Buffalo, and it's hard to really. There are teams around the league though.
Buffalo.
There are teams around the league that'll take a chance on a guy because he's in Buffalo, and he's Robert Hagg's another guy. Robert Hagg also will get looked at the deadline.
Again, with a guy like Butcher, it's how much money they'll eat.
Right. I think Hagg will get looked at, but I think Justin Braun would actually be
Braun's another one on
my
list.
One of the higher guys on the list if he's available.
He's definitely on my list too. We talked about Klingberg. DeHaan in Chicago is another one.
DeHaan's going to be
looked at. DeHaan's the injury question mark is the big thing.
I actually heard that Leddy's ahead of Ristolainen on people's lists when I talk to them. So if you want to talk about
right, and that
it depends what you want. Okay, so. And again, I don't want to be the defender of Ristolainen, but also I'm tired of people with old takes on him when he's played much better this year. So you're not getting Ristolainen for his big shot because the big shot isn't really something that, unless you use him a lot on the power play, which most teams wouldn't now, isn't going to come to bear out. What is coming to bear out is his shot blocking. His defense has been good. He's only had a couple of those bad turns this year where, a goal is attributed to him and you say, okay, he's given Sanheim a lot of confidence. So if you're looking for that physical defenseman, you might take him over Leddy. If you're looking for the offensive defenseman, then you're going to take Leddy. I think Leddy's higher in this, as far as worth. But again, with teams, they have a lot of Nick Leddys. They don't have a lot of Ristolainens.
Right. And another, and going along with Detroit, and we'd probably talk about this with Kevin tomorrow. Mark Stahl is on a $2 million contract. It's not like he was on the big deal he was the previous year. He's a veteran guy. Maybe a Troy Stetcher, who's a mobile defenseman.
Stetcher in Detroit, both of them are on my list here. Hickey on the Islanders is another one that people have talked about. If the Islanders do fall out,
injuries are going to be a killer.
Injuries for sure. And also Brown in Ottawa. That's another one too.
Now, I don't think there's
every year is talked about, but I think this could be the year that Brown actually does move.
I don't think there is any way, even if they retain 50%, that the Devils can move PK Subban at the $9 million mark. So, I think he's stuck in Jersey.
Yeah. So wait, you're talking about Connor Brown getting moved?
No, Josh Brown.
Josh Brown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's a depth defenseman.
I mean he's a guy who makes like nothing. He makes like 1.2, and he's there. But there are people who when you talk around, there's people who will talk about different kinds of defensemen. The impact defensemen.
Yeah.
We talked about at the beginning. They're like the maybe $2.5 million and up type guys who are considered the impact defensemen, and then the $2 million and down are considered the depth guys.
The big name that's out there, and somebody in the chat was mentioning him, and he's got a lot of term left, and he's a really good defenseman, but is Chychrun. And
All right. Well, I have something on him. I did ask around about him, and what I've heard on him is that the NHL, who has been extremely patient with Arizona in general about a lot of things, does not want any part of them moving Chikrin, and that's been made pretty clear.
Yeah, we figured that. We said
Like
that
they're saying,
previous
listen,
shows.
you
Yeah.
have to
Right,
have you
because
have to build a team.
they're an organization without talent if they trade. And he's like,
Right. You have to field it. You have to field a team. You have to give your fans somebody whose jersey they want to buy. There's like certain things that you have to do, and Chikrin. So if he moves, I would be shocked. I really would. I know. Friedman reported people were gauging interest for him.
Well, it's the one thing I agree with what you're saying, Ak, and if the league is telling them that, then you know where that franchise is, because if they're telling them not to trade the 3 or 4 good young players that you have, then I heard a theory that the NHL might do a Montreal. I think it was Friedman who mentioned it yesterday, that the NHL might do a Montreal Expos type of thing and buy the franchise from the current owners and sell it to a team for the expansion rate, which was
I don't know if these owners want to do that though.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, the NHL has the final say here, Russ. If they're running this team into the friggin' ground and they can't get that big money thing in Tempe going, they're a team without a building to play for.
Okay, but here's
possible,
the other thing though.
Dude.
If they do buy it back, then they're going to run the cap as a net zero kind of thing. And
Yes.
It's hard to even get any better that way. And they're not going to be able to sell the team instantly that way, because then you have to get every owner to agree on it. They're better off telling these owners, you're moving or you should sell the team right now. That's what they're better off doing.
Well, and maybe that's an option, but I think the NHL sees a possibility of flipping of buying this team like a foreclosure and flipping it and making money on it. No, I'm saying, but
I don't think you're totally wrong, Mike. You might
So
be
they're
right
going to have Jeremy Roenick out there showing the place. Like, is he going to be
right
outside?
for all the wrong reasons.
No, it's the NHL version of flip and flop. That's what it is.
Now, here's the thing about this. Like the NHL does love 32 teams. It's a number that they're really happy with. They're comfortable with it. That's where they want to be for a while. And there are places that want teams. So it's not out of the question that they would do something like that. I think that they would take one of their teams and
they'll do it if they have to, because there is no place for them to play. So if they don't have a quick sale for an owner, they're gonna have to. Like, I get that.
Yeah, and they could get the expansion. They could make it into like an expansion type situation. And and that's not out of the question. I've heard that too.
But really, if you're talking about the overall landscape of defensemen who are rentals at the deadline, it's probably about 10 to 12, of varying quality, and that's not a lot. Now, maybe there'll be more out there that have term left.
It's a lot, and it's a lot, Mike, in this like cap frozen world. It's quite a bit actually, because there's not that many teams that can do much. And from what I've been told, you're talking about you're gonna have to make player trades, and it's gonna get tricky. I mean, to make, I think there's no question that Giordano and Sherratt are the guys who interest everybody way above everybody else. I think those are the two that definitely. I mean, Klingberg has some value, but there's also has value for sure. He's a great defenseman, but there are also people who think that Dallas isn't really going to move him. So that's like sort of an in between. People don't know really what's going to happen with Klingberg.
It depends on what, because Klingberg has come out and basically says he wants a deal, or his representative says he wants a deal close to what Heiskanen got, and they can't afford it.
I'd be like, here's the door.
But no one can. But no one can. There's no one in the league that can afford that. So.
Well, there are teams. It's just
there are teams that can afford it, but there's no one.
Klingberg doesn't really play defense either, so there is a limitation for him.
He's a Swedish Sergei Gonchar. He's a rover,
right?
Yeah, and I think that Gonchar is a good example, because he's a guy who we saw start to get moved all over the place towards the end of his career.
All over the place.
Yeah, at the end of his career, because it's
playing like $5 million a year here, $5 million a year there.
He's a mercenary.
I think you can see that with Klingberg very easily.
No, but I think he's going to want to get that long-term deal, and I think somebody who's desperate for offense from the blue line is going to pay. I don't know if they're going to pay $8 million, but maybe they'll pay close to that. I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, I
how old is he? He's how old is he? He's like
Klingberg. I think he's 27 or 28.
27. I don't think anybody's giving him 8. I don't think so.
Yeah.
8 million or 8 years?
8 million.
Okay. They might on a short. They might on a short-term deal.
They might maybe 8 for 3 years, something like that. But I don't think it would be something.
Dougie Hamilton got 9.5, and we know the defensive shortcomings of Dougie Hamilton.
But Hamilton does have more offensive impact than Klingberg.
He's got a lot more upside than Klingberg.
You know, we're talking about the landscape of a league that paid Darnell Nurse 9.5, that paid Seth Jones.
All right, well, here's what we do. For now on, when we talk salaries, we leave the Edmonton Oilers out of it because they have too many salaries that are out. They're outliers. They're absolute outliers.
Yes.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. I mean, Nurse is, you know, that
good player. He's a really good player.
He's a really good player. That contract is insane, but that's
he's an excellent defenseman. But he's 9.5 is way overpaid. I mean, I think he's a $7 to $7.5 million defenseman who hit the mega millions.
So Andre said Klingberg's going to be 30. At 30 for Klingberg, knowing where his career lies, I'm not signing him for more than 5 years.
Yeah, 5 year max. 5 year max.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Chara will find a place at all. I don't think anyone's going to go with that. You know, some other.
Well,
Matt Green, you know, who's a Devil, you know, who's an Islander.
Andy Green.
Sorry, Andy Green.
Well, right but there's the question: is Chara? You know, okay, he decided on the Islanders. But we know this is probably the last year of his career. You know, does he agree to go back to a place like Washington? Does he agree to waive his? I think he's got a no. Well, I don't think he has a no move. He probably just says
he didn't fit in Washington, so I don't think so.
Does he go to Tampa?
He might go to Tampa.
Does he go back to Boston? I mean,
he's not going back to Boston,
right?
I don't think so. Keith Yandel is another one who's on my list.
Listen, Keith Yandel has to break the stupid record first because the team is like afraid to not play him.
Right.
Even though he stinks, this is such a disastrous type thing right now for them.
It really, honestly, do we think there was a previous negotiation like, hey, you're going to let me break the record here, right?
That's why I'm taking $900,000 to play for you.
Yeah, it really seems that way.
It absolutely seems that way, and you know, this is why this is the situation that Florida found themselves in before. Excuse me.
Yeah,
I'm gonna caught my throat, but yeah. That's where they found themselves, This is why Florida had trouble. This is why Florida wasn't sure what to do at some point.
Yeah.
But I mean,
right back. I got a drink 1 second.
Yeah. If the Flyers made a promise to Yandel when they signed him, okay, we'll sign you, or the bargain for you to we'll sign you cheap, but our guarantee to you is that you'll play every game.
Sure seems that way.
Yeah, and that guarantee, obviously, if that was an Alain Vigneault promise, that ended when Vigneault being fired. But obviously, it wasn't because Yandel's still playing. So
yeah, he at this point there were long enough stretches he should have been out of the lineup because he just hasn't cut it. So
how many games does he go? How many games does he have left to go before he breaks the record?
I heard it was sometime in January, but I lost track. Maybe like January 26th.
So if he breaks the record by 1 game, and then they bench him.
Yeah.
If he's doing, the question is he doing enough harm playing on?
He's doing harm. Yeah, he's doing enough harm. Even it's come to the point, Mike, where people have to point out the 1 or 2 good things Yandel did in the game because the rest is just not good. So it's like, that's all that gets talked about now. It's really an uncomfortable spot to be in, and they could be better without him.
But just going back to Arizona for a second, I mean, okay, I know. But let me just read you off this list briefly: Phil Kessel, Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, Antoine Roussel, Johan Larsson, Alex Galchenyuk, Travis Boyd, Anton Strawman, and Ilya Lyubushkin. You know what they all have in common? They're all UFAs.
I know. It's awful.
They will trade probably 4 or 5.
Yeah, and they'll have 15 second-round picks, but what is that going to do?
Well, right, but I'm saying that for them, there's no purpose of them keeping them but they're actually probably going to need, unless they retain, and they can only retain salary on 3 people, they're going to need contracts coming back to get bodies. Yeah, to get to the cap floor. So, I mean, yeah, Bill Armstrong will be busy. It'll be like a clearinghouse.
It will be like a clearinghouse.
It'll be like Publishers Clearinghouse without Ed McMahon. But yeah, I mean.
So one other thing, Mike, I brought this up on Sirius XM. We're at the point now in this season where Thatcher Demko is now a Vezina candidate too.
Yeah.
He's played the most games. He's like top 3 in wins. He's 7-1 for the month. He has really overcome a lot mentally with what's gone on in Canuckland there, and he's been their MVP. I mean, Boudreau has done a nice job there, but if Demko wasn't playing the way he was either, there's no way they would have gotten this far even with Boudreau. So you look at it and you say, yeah, you know what? He may not win it, but he should be in the consideration because he doesn't have the best defense in front of him, and he had all that COVID situation, and he did muscle through all of that mentally. He's a very strong kid mentally. Obviously, he's a big, fast kid. That's the other thing. His what's picked up on his game that hasn't been there before is the speed of his leg kicks. I've seen him make multiple leg kicks now, a left and a right, with lightning fast speed. And for a guy his size, it's hard to score on that.
Yeah, no, when he's on top of his game, he's really on top of his game. Like, he's a guy who, when he's playing at his best, we saw it. You saw it when he first came in last year in the playoffs. Even it's just they couldn't. 2 years ago when they couldn't put Markstrom back in there. Like he was he was killing it. I mean, and they're a team. They're obviously on a roll right now. They are pretty far out of it. They're further out of it than the Islanders or the Flyers. Even the fact that where they are, because 30.
But they're in the Pacific, and the Pacific is a lousy division. The Metro is not.
But they're they're 5 points out, but they have 4 games at hand on them in the Pacific. So that's.
But they also but Eck, they also have a goalie playing like a top 5 goalie in the league. The Islanders don't. The Flyers don't.
Yeah,
I mean that's a big thing too, don't you think?
Oh, for sure, no question about it.
Now the Sabres are going to be the Coyotes of the East because Eakin, Hinostroza, Kajula, Hayden, Jankowski, Miller, Butcher, Haag, and Pizik, and all their goalies except Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen are UFAs. So it's a clearinghouse.
I'm not going to talk about Pekka Luukkonen. I'm just telling you that now.
Yeah. No,
I wonder why, Russ. I wonder why.
It's a Twitter thing, Eck. You don't know about it.
They're going to have to make a lot of moves, obviously, and it's going to be interesting how the Sabres do that because they have to. They have to get
assets back.
They have to get assets back, but they're also not. I mean, how long are their fans going to be able to say we are doing a total sell-off? It's like they have to go with some of these guys that they think, some of these guys who are free agents who they believe in, they have to go with.
Heck, the fans here are intelligent enough to understand.
Yeah, but just because a guy has a UFA, Mike, doesn't mean you shouldn't try to sign him again.
All right, I did get a taste. All right, hold on. I did get a taste of the fan base last night, and there were some tweets there that I could see that some of the fans are really in pain. So, for someone like Pekka Luukkonen that has the short window that's been really good, that's been their only hope, right? So, I even saw a few say, hey, if they send him back down, I'm just going to stop watching him for the rest of the year. Well, that's, I understand where you're coming from, Sabres dude, but that's not the best thing for that kid. Yeah. But it's just, what's interesting is what Mike has said is they are on such a high wire act with that organization right now, because I think they have done a lot of good things. I think they're on the right track, but it's a long track, and they've already been on a long track.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
No, it's a huge problem. It is. It's a huge problem.
I mean, the point is, it's okay, you like the way I'm using him as an example. You like the way Vinny Hinostroza is playing this year. He's trying and he's hustling, and that's great. You can sign him July 1 or whatever. It's if you can get a fourth round pick for him, you trade him. Yeah. Because all you're in right now is evaluation mode when it comes to the Sabres.
You don't trade him for a 4th round pick, Mike. If you want to re-sign him,
what's the back?
If you think he's good, you don't let him go someplace else. He's not coming back. You want to re-sign him if you think he's half decent. I mean, the 4th round draft pick is such a crapshoot. Who knows? I mean,
if they can still outbid everybody for him, Eck. I mean, it is that possibility.
But the point is this: it's one thing to outbid once you've let him out and go out there. It's another thing to try to get him now and say, you're part of our future. We believe in you. Let's sign you. Like that's where this reasoning falls apart. You need, in order to be a good team down the line, you need to have some players who feel that this organization believes in them enough to do that.
That's true. No, you're right about that.
Right. But the Buffalo Sabres right now have $40 million in cap space going into free agency. So if you can sign Vinny Hinostroza to a 1 year extension for $1 million, fine. I mean, I'm just using him as an example. But at some
point you have to trust yourself, Mike. At some point as a GM, you have to say, I think Hinostroza is a good player. I'm going to give him 3 years at $2.5 million or whatever.
Well, no, that's idiocy.
No, it's not. Because then you get a player who wants to be a Buffalo Sabre, who wants to play for you. The insanity that is this constant repeating of trading away every player when they become free agents that's the definition of insanity. I mean, you're not forming anything. You're not forming any team that way. You have to find players. Like, I'll give you an example: the Flyers and Mike Raffle years ago.
Yeah,
like the Flyers. Michael Raffle was good. He was coming up on his free agency, and he was like, oh, okay, he's solid. He does a lot of good things for us, but he wasn't a star or anything. He hadn't had a big year with Giroux or anything yet. But the Flyers went and they said, we're going to give you a 3-year deal. The Flyers did this with Scott Lawton too. Mm-hmm. It's like you go. We're going to give you a 3-year deal for like $2 million a year, whatever. And Raffle's like, wow, I could go in free agency, but this team believes in me for 3 years.
That's fair. I don't know if Hinostroza is at that point.
He might not be the guy, Russ, but there have to be a couple of guys on this list.
I'll tell you a guy who is that guy, and he's homegrown for them is Middlestat, but he can't get on the ice.
Right.
And so that's really killing them.
You need to find the players that are playing hard every night. The guys who do not hate being there, and say to them, to be part of our building. There's no reason not to take a risk.
I'm not against what you're saying, but what I'm saying is like in most of the instances, these players are sort of interchangeable parts. The Mark Pizziks, the Cody Eakins, the Colin Millers,
Drake
Kajula, their bodies, their hole fillers. They were brought in because they didn't want to expose the young guys that they have down in Rochester.
Some guys that are like that.
So honestly, they're just pieces on a chessboard that I move. I don't, if there's somebody like Hinostroza who's played above expectation and you can get him signed to a 1 or 2 year deal at a reasonable amount, that's fine. But you'd have just as good a chance of trading him and getting a draft pick and re-signing him in the summer because you have so much cap space.
Yeah, long term doesn't make sense for Hinostroza. A couple years, sure.
Yeah, a couple years, but I'm saying I think 3-year deal, $2 million a year is something that they have plenty of cap space to do that. It sends a message to their team that they're actually taking a chance that if you play well here and you work hard here, you get rewarded.
Okay, but I'll give you the opposite of that, where it's also a similar situation and it's not working out, like that Austin Watson deal in Ottawa.
Yes. Or Zach Sanford in Ottawa.
Right.
These deals don't always work out. There's no question about it. But that 4th round draft pick that you got traded for doesn't always work out either, Mike. So
no, that's true.
I mean, at the end of the day, what you've done in this is, okay, Hinostroza doesn't work out. At least you've told the players on this team that are fighting for jobs that they are not just fighting to be trade deadline players, like that they're fighting for a possible long-term position in an NHL team and the NHL team is willing to take a chance on some of those guys. Hinostroza is the perfect guy to do that with, I think. And I think that,
all right. So they went in the trade and got Alex Tuck. He was that guy. Yeah. He's doing well now. He's a point a game.
He's already an established player, though.
No, I get it. But their problem is if you have too many seat fillers, when they do want to start to be good, then you are stuck with these guys in their last year of their deals. That's the tricky part.
That's no question. But they have no seat fillers, Russ. I mean, they have there comes a point at which you have what is too many seat fillers? I mean, that team has long-term signed almost nobody.
The guys that it is important. Let's just say this. The Haydens, the Kajulas, the Hinostrozas, the guys that I've mentioned, we know what they are. They're all in their mid to late 20s. They're hole fillers, as I said.
I think they're all different. Those players aren't.
Let finish my point.
The players you listed there are not. I don't.
Let me finish what I was going to say. The players that are important for Don Granato and Kevin Adams to find out what they are over, say, the last half of the season, not, Dylan Cousins is going to play, but Rasmus Asplund, Jacob Bryson, Brett Murray, Yoki Haru, all guys who are 22, 23 years old who can play in the NHL, but they've been limited by the amount of opportunity based on all these other guys being on the roster. You need to find out what those guys are before next year, because going into free agency and going into the trade season, you have to determine, okay, I got this many players. Now I've got to go find 3 or 4 at this position. It's just good management and good coaching to find out what you have on the roster. And when you have too many of these guys that are like good player, good whatever, fine, but they don't make they're not going to make a difference 3 years down the line when you're trying to compete for a playoff spot.
Let's get off Buffalo, because Randy's gotten onto something good here. The last one, and this was a discussion 2 years ago at the Winter Classic when it was Dallas, Nashville. And Philip Forsberg's contract was getting close to being due then. Yeah. It's close now. They're playing great. I don't think he's re-signing with them. So are they just going to ride it out with him and just trade his draft rights?
It's a good question. I've done some research on this too. I'm not convinced he's not re-signing with them, first off. Okay. But I mean, he does not. I've never heard anything about him not liking it there.
No, I don't think it's a situation of that. I think it's a situation of he's going to make too much for them.
Yeah,
he might. Nashville has a way with, in the past has gotten players to take a little bit less because the price of living is so cheap there, and the reality of playing there is like the pressure is kind of minimal. But it's not like a crazy hockey town or anything like that. He's been there his whole career. He definitely is a predator in his mind. So I think that's they could get less from if he does. The problem with Forsberg signing, big money for somewhere else is that Forsberg has predatoritis, which is that he is hot and cold all the time, right? So right now he's hot, but there have been times when he's been cold as ice too. I mean, what we saw last year is all the Predators go cold at the same time. What we're seeing this year is they're all getting hot at the same time, and they're a playoff team if they're all hot at the same time. That's the way they are. But the weird thing about the Predators is that they never have some guys hot and some guys they just never do.
But their situation right now is Ekholm's extension kicks in next year.
That's a killer.
Saros is making $5 million.
Oof.
Saros
is short term though. He's
3 more years.
3 more years, but
the only way they're able to afford Forsberg is if they are find some sucker to take Ryan Johansson or Matt Duchene. I mean, I don't know whether Granlund.
Well, I mean, here's the thing about Lazarus for a second is they have their goalie Askarov is coming. So he's
right
when he gets there, he's on a rookie contract. So you look at those 3 years that Lazarus has signed, 2 of those at least are maybe 3 are Askarov years. And so there you're going to have less than $6 million between your 2 goalies. Essentially, that's how they'll look at it, and that's okay. For Predators, they'll say, okay, that's fine. We got they have 2 pretty good goalies too. They'll have if Askarov is what people expect him to be, and Saros has been very good still. They have 2 really good goalies.
Okay, so he's making 6x6. Are you going to give him 7x7? Can they even afford that?
The only way they can afford it,
Russ, I don't think they can, but. And I do think that there could be some maybe they.
I mean, he's making 6 now. How much less is he going to take? That's my point.
Yeah, I don't think any. He's not going to take less than 6. I agree with you.
But he wants more. Yeah,
he wants more than 6, obviously.
And he's 20.
Will he take 6 for a couple more years?
He's 27 years old.
He's 27 years old, which is crazy. Doesn't he seem older than that? I mean,
he does.
He seems way older than that.
So I mean, honestly, and you've got
so inconsistent that he's a scary person to give more than $6 million a year to, like on any team, for any team to do it.
But other teams will do it.
But somebody's going to really. That reminds me so much of Ryan Johansson. It's like, and I think they're different kinds of players.
He's got a higher skill level than Johansson.
Oh, he's definitely, and I'd rather have him any day of the week. But consistency wise. He's the guy we're going to be saying, man, they're giving him $7 million a year. He's scoring 20 goals. And that's like, that's because Forsberg is really like at his core has been like a 25 goal scorer. Like he's not.
No, but he could get 65 points on most teams.
But that's not a $7 million player.
65 points? It definitely is.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's had
That's a $5 to $6 million player.
63, 64, 58, 64, 50 in 64 games. Those are his first 5 seasons.
Yeah.
He's a $7 to $7.5 million forward.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And that's what I'm saying. Outside of Nashville, the points go up too.
And this year he's over. This year he's over a point per game.
No, this year he's doing amazing. I don't know. It's
like it was a mistake for them to wait on him if they're going to keep him. That's where David Poile made a mistake here.
Yeah, but you can understand why Poile did, because why?
Right. So he rolled the dice, and now he's
How
lost
many
that.
inconsistent players you're going to sign long term? Like if
I know. Well, but again, if you were going to get him cheap, you were going to get him cheaper coming off a bad year or not a great year. He's going to have his best year this year. He is not taking that big of a discount.
But what you might have to do is you might have to trade a top prospect or a first round pick along with a guy like Johansson or Duchesne to a team like Arizona or Buffalo, because to have the teams that have cap space and teams that need bodies, because that might be the reality. They have to find a way to clear that salary out and is Forsberg more important than Duchesne or Johansson? Yes.
Yeah, he's more important than both of them.
Right. He's the second most important player on that team next to Yossi.
But I'm still not sure the market has gotten better on the other two.
No.
Oh, no. Well, Duchesne, it's.
I mean, he's doing better, but he's still got a bad contract.
It's infuriating. Like Duchesne's infuriating. Like
he's a point per game this year.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, like it's like it makes you. It has to make, if you're Poile or like a coach of that team, so angry. Like that he's doing so well, but at the same time, so angry that Duchesne, like the contract year is.
I get it.
My gosh, I mean, you got no effort for 3 years from him, and suddenly, like, he's on a contract year and he's a point per game.
Well, no. Well, you're talking about Duchesne. Duchesne's not on a contract here. He's got
Duchesne is on a contract year, isn't he?
No, he's got 3 years, 4 years.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
And that's what makes him hard to trade.
Right.
I apologize. I thought he was on a contract year. I don't know why I thought that.
And that's why I'm saying you're probably going to have to. He's got 4 more years after this year at $8 million.
No, forget it. He's untradeable.
Yeah, unless you throw Askarov in a deal or throw.
I'm completely wrong on
Johansson.
I apologize, Matt.
And Johansson, what does he have left?
Johansson's got 3 more years at $8 million.
Yeah. He's untradeable too.
Yeah. So I mean,
Johansson maybe. What I would do is I would talk to Seattle about it and try to take. I would see if Seattle would take Johansson and like a second round pick or something like that, or something crazy like that, or try to take Johansson off. Seattle needs to add some skilled forwards.
I mean, he did play in the BCHL. He has some fans out there. There could be a deal to be struck up there, but you only make that deal if you know Forsberg signed.
Right.
Yeah. I agree with that. I agree. You only make a deal if you think Forsberg signed. Randy, that was me, and then giving you praise in the chat room. Sorry about that. Anyway,
Minnesota has placed Victor Rask on waivers. I think he's at a $4.25 million contract. So that's
nobody's touching that.
No.
Yeah, according to Pierre LeBrun, the Anaheim Ducks have.
But hold on, you buried the lead there. They're doing that to Victor Rask because they're probably bringing up Marco Rossi. That's why they're doing it.
Yeah, that's why they're doing it.
I didn't. That it wasn't mentioned.
Yeah, Rossi, because Dan on Hockey Buzz wrote about that today.
Yeah.
And Rossi is that's a big deal. Obviously,
that's a massive deal. That could upgrade their offense. And
they're already a really good team. I mean, they add a lot to it adds a lot to them right off the bat.
And just an update here while we were on the show, I was monitoring the Leafs post practice media availability. Austin Matthews tested negative for the PCR test after testing positive on a rapid test. So they held him out of practice for precautionary reasons. So right now they don't know for sure whether he'll play tomorrow night against Edmonton.
Will he get tested one more time?
Oh yeah, they'll test him. I think you have to have 2 negatives after a positive to make sure. So, but they were being extra careful, which is smart because they've had 15 positives over the last month. So.
Yeah, the other thing is, and only because I was in the mode of Rossi because of Rask being sent down. Matt Boldy got called up too. Matt Boldy's a hell of a winger, and he's already a physical specimen. So if Matt Boldy's ready, again, I picked this team to make it to the Stanley Cup. They can make it to the Stanley Cup.
I'm telling you,
no, you're right.
I'm telling you, they are a scary friggin' bunch to play against. Foligno and Greenway are freight trains. They are such big, tough.
Yeah.
I honestly,
they just need goaltending. They have to have the right goaltending.
They trade for Fleury or Quick or somebody who's an upgrade over Kokkonen and Talbot, and
that could put them on that run.
Yeah. I think they will. I think they will because I know that they've been trying to upgrade their goaltending for a while now. I know that for sure. So anyway, my stupid table. I got sorry about that. All right, all the time we have for today, folks. Without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will be back again tomorrow.